Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in. For those I have not met yet, my name is Mary Wallace, and I'm the Life Enrichment Coordinator Office here at Friends Homes Guilford. And today I get to introduce an awesome presentation from one of our very own residents. Gertrude Gill has lived at Friends Home since May of 2021, but has been a familiar face around campus before then. She began volunteering, she recently told me 20 years in 1980. She volunteered for 20 years serving trays for meals, and then she also served again in the friendly gift shop downstairs in 2017, but that was cut short due to the pandemic, as almost everything else was. Before retirement, Gertrude worked at Guilford College as the prospect researcher. I think she could tell that I didn't know what that was, and in her words, she said, "I helped hunt for money." Now that she has fully acclimated and then some to life at Friends Homes, she has become an active member of the community. Since September of 2023, last year, she has become the main curator of the Woolman Curio Cabinet that is located across from the mailroom on the first floor of Woolman. The objects in the back of the room, if you haven't seen them yet, will also be on display during the month of June, didn't want to get that wrong. Before traveling to New Zealand this past January, Gertrude promised upon her return that she would gladly share her experience in a presentation to the Friends Homes community. So please, help me in welcoming Gertrude in fulfilling her promise of presenting Blissful, Beautiful, Bountiful, a New Zealand Travelogue.
It's really great to be among friends. I have a great audience today. I have some people who have known me since I was a kid, and they and I live here at Friends Homes now, and one of my college suite mates is here, so she can tell you what it was like when I came as a very green 18-year-old to college. So anyway, we'll see how this goes. I know I have some people who have been to New Zealand. I hope I don't wreck these New Zealand names too much. They didn't do too much teaching of that, but you know, we heard them pronounced and they just rolled off people's tongues. And my traveling companion is here, Carol Cawthorn. Carol is a resident of the future. So, and so are some of my other friends that are here. I brought in some ringers. So anyway, let's get started. This is the greeting. Kia ora. Can you say that? Kia ora?
Kia ora.
We heard that every morning, all the time. It's now part of New Zealand English, and it translates to have life and be healthy. So kia ora to all of you. This is the name for New Zealand in Maori. It means land of the long white cloud. Aotearoa. Probably somebody can pronounce that better than I can. I still call it New Zealand. There's the New Zealand flag, and you see it has a Union Jack in the upper left corner, and the blue represents the sea and the sky which surround New Zealand. The stars represent the Southern Cross to signify New Zealand's place in the South Pacific. This is what some Maori people may look like. Some may look just like you and me, but some have these tattoos. And the man is doing this haka, end of the haka, sticking out his tongue. It's pretty scary actually, but he doesn't look to have any carvings, but some of the men have carvings and tattoos, and very often those will be the chiefs. And the woman has a little tattoo, almost looking like a little goatee on the chin. Well, we were at a dinner one time there, and there was a woman speaking, but she sounded like a guy. And so, you know, my travel people said, "Oh, that's a guy speaking." I said, "No, look at the little tattoo underneath the chin." And we decided it was a woman, but she sounded so much like a man. I'm gonna try to get my notes here. The Maori, the indigenous people of New Zealand, first settled between the 9th and 11th centuries AD. European settlers began to arrive in 1769. They were led by the British explorer James Cook. Today, the Maori make up 15% of the population. The men have the tattoos and even carvings, and this would be especially true of the tribal chief. Much more attention is paid to the Maori culture than, say, 40 years ago. We had somebody on our trip that had been there 40 years before, and they said, they didn't pay much attention to the Maori culture. In fact, they sort of kicked them down. But now they're really more of a point of pride for New Zealand than when they were largely marginalized. This is the alphabet. This is a little kid's alphabet, but it's a little like the Hawaiian alphabet. The alphabet in Hawaii doesn't have all the letters either. It's 10 consonants and 5 vowels: A, E, I, O, U, H, K, M, N, P, R, T, W, N, G, and W, H. The special things about this is that the R is rolled, and the W, H makes the sound of F. They don't have F, so that makes the sound of F. They also don't have S, and so they say a word twice. And the NG sounds like the end of our word in thing, but it usually appears at the middle or beginning of the word. This little silver leaf you'll see on all the New Zealand products, be embossed in or stamped in or on a little tag, but it represents anything made in New Zealand. Now I call this first part Blissful, because this is the story of meeting my childhood pen pal after 58 years, and I still can't say that without cracking up, because it was so meaningful to meet someone that you had corresponded with since she was 10 and I was 11. Well, here's what happened. Martha Dentiste is here somewhere, and Martha Dentiste says, let's go to New Zealand. I said, that'd be really nice. I've always wanted to go, but not until I found my pen pal and find out if she's still alive. Because her mother had died as a very young woman. I thought, Karen may not still be alive. We had not corresponded for more than 50 years. So anyway, this is a section about my pen pal, and I call it Blissful, which of course means joyful. I have a New Zealand proverb for each section, and this is the white heron flies once. This is used on an occasion when something is very special or unusual takes place, and I think there's your white heron. So, this is the person I was looking for. This is the person I want to see. Karen Smith, age 10, in 1966, a student at the New Zealand Friends School. This is the last picture I had of her from childhood, and she's on the left at age 14. Now you might be interested in how this got started. Some of you may remember a woman named Margaret Coltrane and her husband John. They worked here at Friends Homes, but Margaret and John were also members of New Garden Meeting, and she was my Sunday school teacher. And so she came with these names from children in New Zealand and said, hey kids, you guys are gonna be pen pals, here you go. And when Margaret Coltrane told you to do something, you did it. So anyway, you may remember Margaret and John. They were just salt of the earth people. And their daughter, Jane Norwood, lives here at Friends Homes. How about that? She's in the nursing at Whittier. So anyway, I was gonna start looking for her, and so I participated in a little book exchange for a little Pollyanna thing, and all these books were wrapped up, and so you didn't know what you were gonna get, but the book I got was The Whale Rider, which was written in New Zealand by a New Zealand writer and made into a movie later on. So I received this as an exchange gift about the time I was looking for Karen. So I thought that was kind of a good omen. Well, I contacted newspapers, libraries, friends, meetings, anybody I could think of on the North Island, because that's where Karen was living. And this is Nikki McDonald, who is of The Stuff. The Stuff is an online newspaper, and she found Karen's Facebook page. So there was the Facebook page, that was a picture. And it said, studied at Wellington East Girls College, check. And the dates were right, so I said, well, I'm gonna try it. And I could see that she didn't use Facebook, so I used it very little back then too. But her daughter did. Her daughter lives on Facebook, folks. You know people like that of a different generation. So I pinged the daughter, and the daughter was more than happy to get us in touch. So my search really lasted just from the very end of December to January 6th. And we were back in touch. And this is her holding her grandchild. So I want to go to New Zealand. 2020, what happens in 2020? Martha and I were ready to go. In between, Martha has a little fall, and she can't go, but Carol stepped in for her. So anyway, there was this gap of 3 years that I couldn't go. But I made this scrapbook for Karen, and I ended up making a copy for myself. Is Diane Howdishaw here? Don't know, but anyway, Diane made the cover for this. And, you know, we're back in touch with email, snail mail, Facebook Messenger, phone calls. We can call on Messenger for free, which is cool, because we can talk an hour and a half. And some gifts and what all. So anyway, I planned to get to New Zealand to meet Karen. And the scrapbook is back there minus the cover, because it didn't make the cover again. That's me in the apartment with my New Zealand hat. We all bought, well, I guess Carol had some, but anyway. I needed this hat because the sun is so strong in New Zealand. And we also used up a whole bunch of sunscreen. So that's me holding the scrapbook in my apartment before I go in. Jill and I had gone out and found this hat, so there's the hat. So it wouldn't be fair to keep you in waiting. This is our first meeting after 58 years. And we're at a restaurant called Dockside, right on the water. It's a beautiful place. And Carol and I went down in a taxi, thanks to the Colette people. And then the Colette group that we were part of came in, and all of them came rushing down to the end of the table. Are you the pen pal? Are you the pen pal? So I think Karen felt like a real celebrity. And so the next day, we spent the entire day together. It was wonderful. And if you don't think that's joy, that's joy. That's your blissful. And I even got written up in the paper, and that's when some people kind of found out about it. I even got above the fold, folks. So, front page above the fold. I thought I had arrived. So anyway, and Karen was featured in there too, and the reporter contacted Karen and talked to her, and that was wonderful. Okay, so we're ready for the next section, which I call Beautiful. The land and culture of New Zealand. This is an introduction. I know a lot of you have been to New Zealand. Maybe it'll bring back some memories, who knows. Karen suggested this quote: "With your basket and my basket, the people will live." And this refers to cooperation and combination of resources to get ahead. So anyway, that was when she found it. She actually found for the entire slideshow, but I chose 2 more. And this is a promise that you find places, and I think it's really neat. I didn't find it written out like this until we were kind of all the way through the trip, but I did feel that the Kiwis, the New Zealanders, had a great respect for their land and culture. While traveling in New Zealand, I will care for the land, sea, and nature, treading lightly and leaving no trace. Travel safely, showing care and consideration for all, respect culture, traveling with an open heart and mind. That'd be good anywhere. So we left Greensboro on January 8th. We had a night in Los Angeles, and we left on New Zealand Air on the 9th. We completely missed January 10th, and we landed in New Zealand on the 11th. We picked up the day on the way back. So we flew Air New Zealand, and I cannot say enough nice things about Air New Zealand. Excellent food, good service, kind people, and when you see me later, I'm wearing the socks that I got from New Zealand, from the little packet. Here's a little airline packet, the little bag of socks and hand lotion, toothpaste and toothbrush. earplugs and eye shade, the whole works. This is the kind of thing they used to give you on British Air. They may still do it. I haven't traveled that much. I don't think we got it when I went to Ireland, but anyway, we got this and they just couldn't have been nicer. And this is the picture I took once we got there, and it shows our flight, which was listed Los Angeles, 5:39 a.m. And we breezed through customs with the support of the airport staff. They were just lovely young people, and it was really confusing what to declare, because I had, for example, some nuts and some cough drops with honey in them, and those were two things that were a no-no. But we found out that if they were packaged, it was okay, but I still declared what I had, and I got through with everything. The reason why you declare is because if you don't, they're gonna slap on a $400 New Zealand fine for just you carrying through an apple. Now this was our little bag. We joined a Colette tour. We felt like it's just not something we wanted to do on our own, and it was the right decision. And Colette, I can recommend heartily to you. It was an activity level 2. Activity level 1 means you can barely crawl to the breakfast area or something, you know. But level 2, I thought, it goes up to level 5, but level 2 allowed me to take my rollator. And with Carol's help, and with the help of some of the other people on the trip, I made it to most of the places. This is our first hotel, the Ridges Auckland, and the Sky Tower's right outside. They try to place, Colette tries to place the travelers in cities, which is interesting. Now you can walk around the tower, you can jump from it. I think Carol threatened to, but you know, it was our first day and I was just not keen on contacting 3 Cawthron boys if anything happened. But it reminded me of the space needle. The reason why Carol could have gone for free is that anybody over 75 can do it for free. But I was glad she didn't. This is our travel group. There were 21, 9 couples and 3 single women. Carol and I, 2 of the single women, and we had another single woman. We called her, she was Mary Christina, but they called her Sister Mary. It just kind of was a name that stuck, and she was hilarious. She was from Vermont and had worked for Ben and Jerry's. She was quite the person. But you see Carol's in the pink shirt, and I'm right next to her there. Okay, this is our bus driver, Peter, in the red cap, and our guide, Dexter, and Dexter was full of it. He was very smart. He's a trained horticulturist, so he knew a lot, taught us a lot, but the jokes were just great. So this is a typical street in Auckland. And the only thing about Auckland I'll say is there were those little cones everywhere because they're building a subway. So it was hard to get around. But we did manage to get around, and you know, I got a lot of exercise. It is about the size of a city of Philadelphia or Phoenix, but it didn't feel that large to me because we're talking all the suburbs, and you'll see the suburbs that we're gonna go to soon. That's why the city itself didn't feel that large. A modest home here in Auckland costs 1 million New Zealand. The city is about 1.6 million. This is Sistema, and I like Sistema. I think it's a good product, and there's a few pieces out on the table there. It's made in New Zealand. It was a man's dream to produce beautiful products. Our guy just said, oh, well, it's our answer to Tupperware. So I'm gonna take you kind of in chronological order because as a historian, that's the only way I know to do it. And this is still in Auckland. I took that picture to try to show you the sparkling water. It was better in person, but it just really sparkled. And that's a picture of it as well, but that's somebody else took that. I don't think they did any better than I did, but but anyway. Auckland is the city of sails because they've got a boat for every 3 people, and they've won the America's Cup 4 times and have a little village dedicated right to that America's Cup. Now Now this is Putakawa. Putakawa. It's sort of their Christmas tree. They have regular Christmas trees, but this is a natural Christmas tree. You see with the red on the top. Now, we're still in Auckland. I begin to think, gosh, I'm back in Greensboro, because look what I see, oil tanks. But theirs are high. They're 3 times as high as ours. But I thought, oh dear, they have oil tanks too. This was the next place. It's Bastion Point, and it's a monument to Michael Joseph Savage, the Labor Party Prime Minister from 35 to 40. And he was well loved because of the social welfare programs that he put in place. And this just shows you some landscaping near those are my pictures, and this is a picture I took. I got some, fairly decent pictures, and you'll see some others that are not my pictures, but anyway. This is Selwyn Reserve in Fishing Bay. And it's a popular park. And this is looking back toward the city. You can see in the background, you see that Space Needle. Sky Tower, rather. Now this was a place that Carol and I liked a lot. It was called the Movenpick Ice Cream Shop. And this tour made frequent little rest stops and little stops to shop and little stops to eat. So that was great. And there's Carol, and she's wearing her hat. And we were there on a weekend, and the guy said, well, you see what a weekend's like. Well, the thing was, we really didn't see that many people out, but, it was summertime there. This is the next little village we went to, the village of Parnell. It's a really charming little village known for being upscale with boutiques and galleries. And it's famous for the Parnell baths. This is Poisonby. Poisonby is an inner city suburb of Auckland, refurbished turn of the 19th century village. Our guy says, well, this is where the creative types live. When you consider all these suburbs, then Auckland does seem as big as Philadelphia or Phoenix. This was the grave of the governor, William Hobson, and he's the one that signed the Waitangi Treaty, and that becomes important because we're going to go see where that was signed. And that was the point of going on this next part of the trip. This is not my picture, but it's the Bay of Islands landscape, and it was every bit that beautiful. When we arrived at the airport, and we told the young people that we were going to the Bay of Islands, some of them had lived there, and they were so excited that we were going to go there. And even in the 1960s, my pen pal had sent me a little travel booklet about the Bay of Islands. So this is the Bay of Whales, and I just put that in because our guide commented about that this is how they name things. Whales are seen there, that's the Bay of Whales. And this is the toy plant, which they pronounce Toto. It's a native plant, and our guide was quick to differentiate it between the pesky pampas grass. He didn't like anything that wasn't native New Zealand. He wasn't native New Zealand, he thought he was. He was born in Fiji, but he liked to think of himself as a native Kiwi. But anyway, this grass is used to make mats and baskets, and has little medicinal purposes too. This is the manuka tree. You may have heard of manuka honey. It's very popular, very famous, and very expensive. The distinctive features of the flowers, nectar, and leaves of the manuka make it ideal for the honey. And you can find the manuka honey in many personal products like shampoos and that kind of thing. We saw this in the hotels. This is the kanuka tree, which is different, but they also make honey out of it, and it's antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory. Okay, this little guy, he's so cute. He's the kiwi bird, and he's an icon of New Zealand, and I came back with a couple little things with the kiwi bird on it. But the kiwi bird, the kiwis, the people, the kiwi bird, but then there's kiwi fruit, and our guide made us to be sure and say always kiwi fruit if we were referring to the fruit. And also some of our hotels were participating in a Save the Kiwi program. So we had a door hanger, and if we were willing not to have room service, they would give a Kiwi a meal. So that was kind of cute. This is Walworth Coast, another, where we stopped in a little town. But isn't that beautiful? There's the little town. A lot of these little towns, they look a lot alike. And this is where you get into the WH pronounced as F, Whangarei. This was a report where we stopped for shopping and for lunch. They had a lot of upscale shops, plentiful restaurants. You could tell they were all set out for tourists. And that's where we had lunch, which was Riverside Cafe. Now, I remember they had a big urn in there where you could fill your water bottle. A lot of restaurants had that. This is a typical milking shed, not like our barns exactly, but the cows kind of walk in and get milked. And Dexter, the guide, was telling us a lot about this because his daughter is actually a shepherd, but a shepherd for cattle. Cattle are mostly on the North Island, and we're on the North Island here. Okay, this is what we came to see, which is where the Treaty of Waitangi was signed, and this is the chief's house. Now, they tell you not to take pictures of the Maori unless you ask. So I followed the rules, and I didn't take pictures of them doing their performance, so I didn't get a picture of them, but I got a picture afterwards. They were glad to take pictures afterwards. People cheated, whatever. I was good. And this is actually the treaty house where it was signed, February 6, 1840. It's a national holiday. My pen pal reminds me of that every year. And interestingly enough, she was taught Maori language at the Friends School, but this was not reflected in any of her letters as a child, but she uses it now. They were really big on showing us what was the biggest thing they could find, and this was the war canoe. It was the largest canoe in New Zealand. Now this is our hotel, the Scenic Hotel, but here's the nice part. Right outside our door, that's our view. And Carol said it reminded her a lot of places in Indonesia. Now, we went on a cruise the next day. It's a hole in the rock cruise. And this is the lighthouse up at the top in the middle. And then down below you see a little house. That was the lighthouse, lighthouse keeper's house. It was in use from 1910 to 78 when an automated one was put in. So this was the hole in the rock cruise, and there's the hole in the rock. And the boat could actually go underneath there, but it didn't that day because the conditions had to be just right to do that. So we did not pass through it. But here was our ship, and here's the interesting thing about our ship. It was a crew of 4 women, all women. This is where we were headed, Otahe Bay at Yurapukabuka Island. And we saw evidence of a lot of people camping there. You know, it was summertime for them. Okay, this is a kauri tree. And, you know, the guide says, we're going to a museum about a tree. I went, oh, yeah, great. I wonder what that'll be all about. But it was a fascinating museum, and we really loved it. It's one of the largest species of trees. It is the largest in New Zealand. So this tree, the museum honors one of the most extraordinary trees in our relationship with it. I took this picture and it came out, I think, pretty good as their picture of it. It was a walkthrough of this once and future forest. It was very enchanted. It was just really neat to walk through that, and you know, you saw all these lights and all. It was neat. It was a forest walkway, darkness to light, where they were trying to show you the Maori creation legend. So this is where it kind of reminded me of the Greensboro History Museum, because at the Greensboro History Museum we have these little rooms with people standing and sitting and showing colonial life. Well, that's exactly what they did here, and this Sterling family gave a whole bunch of money, so their likenesses are on these ancestors. This is a great front cabinet. You see how huge it is. It wouldn't fit in any of our homes probably today, but we saw a lot of things made from this wood and a lot of things made from the resin of the tree, which was polished and carved. So there's some instruments. Now Carol and I were particularly interested in this one. It's a pump organ because she recently had a pump organ restored. This is, probably 2 or 3 stories. That gives you the idea of the rings of the tree. So anyway, it was a pretty big tree. And I like this little guy. He's the tuatara. He became my favorite animal. He's a rare reptile, and he lived at the time of the dinosaurs, still living today. So I actually found a book on him, and that book is now at the New Garden Meeting Library for the kids. This is another town we were in, Papakura, another one of our little rest stops, chance for shopping, and in my case, for finding a very expensive Diet Coke. And here's the mohair and possum store. I'll tell you more about the possum later. But I went into this little gift shop. It was a little like Hallmark, except for having the textiles. So then we see the longest river, Waikato. This was, they were big on pointing out these points of interest. So there's what the river becomes when it's narrowed down to 15 meters. It's sort of the falls, the Hookah Falls, and there's Carol posing with the Hookah Falls. We saw lots of Holstein. That was the cows that we saw, and they're very big there because their biggest export is dried or powdered milk. Boy, did I ever think about Ruth Ann Hood when I saw that dried and powdered milk. Meat and timber are the next 2 largest exports. And it's generally cattle on the North Island and sheep on the South Island. I began to think I was back in Alaska. There I was seeing totem poles, but you see that from indigenous cultures. I took this picture of a shepherd made of aluminum, and they're corrugated, so not aluminum, iron. They have these corrugated iron roofs that last about 25 years, and they even build little structures out of them. There's your dog. And that whole thing is made out of the iron. That's our hotel, beautiful hotel. And Rotorua is where the main of the Maori culture is presented. It's also Sulphur City. You have to kind of get used to it. It's home to mud pots, geysers, stinky air. But it sits on top of the top of a volcano. That might be why. We went to this village, Whakarewa. Anyway, he could just roll that off his tongue. This is the entrance to the village, and it is a living village where people actually live there, and it's open until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. These are some of my pictures, and I've got a couple that are better, but you can see the steam rising out of there. There's the chief's house. And this is a professional picture. It's a little better. You can see how the geyser does. Pohito. These are some more of mine, just to prove we were there. While we were there, they handed us some corn that had been cooked in the thermal water, and it was just delicious. It had no butter, no salt, no pepper, just water and corn. It was delicious. Maybe I should have saved that for the food section. Okay, Daniel at the village, he talked about the pink and white terraces of New Zealand. It's the 8th wonder of the world. And they thought they were destroyed, but then in 2011 they were unearthed again. So who knows? And right about that same place, we saw this Rainbow Mountain Scenic Preserve. Well, there was no rainbow in the mud, and it was just to me, a swamp of bubbling mud. But here's where we went that evening, to a hangi. More about this meal later, but this was part of the pre-meal entertainment. and this is the after meal entertainment. It was quite a lengthy program. Most of these people were adults in this one. There were more kids in that other one. Lake Tahoe, their largest lake. They made sure we saw it. It's beautiful and blue just like that, and it is coral at the edge. White pumice stone at the edge. It's a little town, and when we had a rest stop there, I decided I'd go in this little bakery, and I got a scone, and I looked up, and there was our leader and our bus driver, so I must have picked the right one, because they know what places are. Another little picture of the shopping. He pointed out the trees that were uprooted by Cyclone Gabriel. There was lots of damage still from that. It was only just a few years ago. Okay, we went to a little town, Tallahassee, and this is the gumboots capital.
Well, kick it on the
New
gun,
Zealand.
Trim.
Here you go, folks.
Gumboots, they are wonderful, gumboots, they are swell, cause they keep out the water, and they keep in the smell. And when you're sitting round at home, you can always tell, when one of the trips has taken off his gumboots. If it weren't for your gumboots, where would you be? You'd be in the hospital or infirmary, cause you would have a dose of the flu or even pleurisy if you didn't have your feet in your gumboots. Rugby boots and racing boots and boots for drink and rum, but the only boots I'm never without are the ones that start with gum. I've got short ones and long ones and some up to me belt. I'm never dressed till I've got on me gum boots. If it weren't for your gum boots, where would you be? You'd be in the hospital or infirmary, cause you would have a dose of the flu or even pleurisy if you didn't have your feet in your gum boots.
My gumboots are a must. They help me hit the high notes and protect my feet from a dust. They keep the water well away, so my voice won't get no rust. You will not never see me without me gumboots.
If it weren't for your gumboots, where would you be? You'd be in the hospital or infirmary, cause you would have the dose of the flu or even pleurisy if you didn't have your feet in your gumboots. They're all Muldoon and rolling, they haven't made a hit. They're ruining the country more than just a bit. If they keep on the way they're going, we'll all be interred. So you better get your feet up your gumboots. If it weren't for your gumboots, where would you be? You'd be in the hospital or infirmary, cause you would have the dose of the flu or even pleurisy if you didn't have your feet in your gumboots. If it weren't for your gumboots, where would you be? You'd be in the hospital or infirmary, cause you would have the dose of the flu or even pleurisy if you didn't have your feet in your gumboots.
This is why Colette is a wonderful tour group. They played that for us on the bus, and of course, I could find it on Google, and so I just loved it. It's a cute song, you know. So this was the next town, and this is their cute sign, which, you know, it's like the medical center is curable, and the police station is constable, and many more. This is Levin, and this was another town we went to on the way to Wellington, and I was glad to see what Levin looked like, even though we just saw a little bit of it, because this is where, when I found Karen, this is where she was living. This is Novotel. You know, Novotels are all over Europe. I'd stayed in plenty of them before, and it was just fairly typical of a Novotel. Fairly modern. And Wellington is built on the top of a mountain, is known as Windy Welly. So this is, while I was visiting with Karen, Carol went to this WECTA workshop, which is a special effects company, prop company, video games. You know, movies are big in New Zealand. And there's the proof that she was there. Now, these are the old government buildings. They're not used, they have new government buildings now, but this is the second largest wooden building in the world. These are the new ones, and this is called the Beehive. It was designed by Basil Spence, who designed the new Coventry Cathedral. If anybody's been there, I've been there many times and love it. But our guide didn't think much of the Beehive. He liked the traditional. This is a constitutional democracy that they have, and I could tell you a little bit more about it, but I'm also kind of looking at time. This is the Dockside Restaurant where we ate, and this was a beautiful place. I didn't have my camera with me at this place, but I got some really nice pictures offline. It's Old St. Paul's, which is now used as an event center. Isn't that gorgeous? I mean, it's just a beautiful place. And actually, wasn't too far off for having the Christmas tree there, because they had a little shop in the back over there, which they were selling Christmas things, as we were there right after Christmas. It was a beautiful place. And there's their organ. And I was glad that I saw this, because Lambton Key is where my pen pal worked when she worked with her aunt, had a restaurant. And they're working on in Wellington and many places to make more places earthquake proof. And they use rubber and they use ball bearings. This is the Te Papa Museum that we went to. Maori translation is Container of Treasures. We mainly focused on the Maori part because we couldn't do it all. And that was when I knew I couldn't see other places. So this was a piece that Karen and I liked. It's a tapestry, 60 panels of tarpaulin sewn together with cotton thread with Maori sewing. Now that's my picture, and I think it's pretty good. That's the picture of what the whole thing looks like. That's somebody else's picture. But this is where you can see somebody else's picture, where you see the slashes in the fabric. And here's another one that we really liked. This was just strung across the top and then made all these patterns on the floor. And that's my picture. And there's a picture of somebody else, but you get a little better idea of it. And then we have our little man with his tongue hanging out, this typical sculpture with the haka. The human form is very much evident in the Maori art form. Karen sent me 2 tikis when we were kids, so they're back there. And it was probably the first Maori word I knew. And so we went to a place that sold jade, and we saw how the jade was done. That was the Mountain Jade place. We watched them carve it, and you know, there's much more, but that's just, they're just some pieces of it. They're just beautiful. And they also carve bone, and I'm wearing a piece that Karen gave me that's bone with abalone. And also their other craft is baskets. I can get to it. There we go. There's a little basket back there that Karen sent me. I'm lucky I got all this stuff from Karen. This is New Zealand flax. Now, the next thing, we're headed to the South Island, but before we get to the South Island, we got to go through the airport. And who would be at the airport but some guys doing the haka? So here you're gonna get an idea of that. next slide, maybe the next slide will work. Yep. You can see why they win all the time, my goodness. I'm scared to death of them. And we heard this in the airport, it wasn't this All Blacks team, but it was loud. Just as loud as it was in here. So we got to Christchurch, and so we flew from the North Island to South Island. And this is the church that was damaged in the earthquake. But what I have this picture for is this beautiful chalice that was actually put up before the earthquake and was not damaged. It's just gorgeous. Neil Dawson's magnificent, magnificent sculpture. This is a 9/11 memorial because they sent people over to help. And so those are some of the girders from the 9/11. This is where we stayed. This is where I could go back and stay forever. This is a Crown Plaza Christchurch, built after the earthquake, had every bell and whistle you'd ever want. And by the way, Christchurch is their perfect English city. And I just had to show you how it looked. That was the bath. And I mean, I was so happy to see that because I was tired of climbing in bathtubs without railings. And, you know, I was ever so glad to get back to my safe one here at Friends' Homes. Very modern. That's the TV, and you could even hear the TV in the bathroom. And that was our room, except we had single beds. We ate this place, right on the edge there, right where you see those people sitting, that's where we ate. This is the cardboard cathedral. It's a transitional cathedral. And it's most interesting, most beautiful. And, you know, it's hard to say how long it'll last. It's made from cardboard tubes, covered in plastic. I get down to see my notes here. Well, anyway, that's the inside of it. It's designed by a Japanese architect. His last name was Ban, and he's known for disaster architecture. Won the Pritzker Prize for this one. This is the church they still hope to rebuild, but they still need what's called money to get that taken care of. Now these are the Lombardy poplar trees. You don't see those here in North America, but they're used for boundaries. We went to the Botanic Gardens there at Christchurch, and then to a place called Willowbank, which was all kinds of animals, really. There's my little guy again. The Kia parrot, and the takai, the flightless bird. Then one place that we were suggested we go to was the Quake City, which explained all about the earthquakes. And we listened to a lot of stories that really reminded me of 9/11. Somebody accidentally made a 7.1 proof ale, and they sold it, to help with the earthquake, but help raise money. This is a Victorian free house, just like an English pub, and we ate there. It was very close to the hotel. This was the next place we went to, which was the Hermitage at Mount Cook. And pretty much, if you're gonna stay at Mount Cook, this is where you stay, because it's about the only game in town. Now, this is what we saw at Mount Cook. Very overcast that day. Got the worst night of sleep that I could have gotten in New Zealand, because we had thunder all night long. But anyway, Mount Cook is named for a Maori legend, and I don't really have time to read all that, so I'll let you see that in the scrapbook or later. This is what we would have seen if it hadn't been overcast. These are the pivot irrigators, and of course, Dexter being so into agriculture, he was pointing all those kind of things out. This is our longest bridge, Reykjavik, the longest bridge in New Zealand. And this is a sweet little town called Geraldine. They even had their own little tourist brochure, and we spent a lot of time there shopping for our souvenirs. It's the largest wool producer after Australia. Accounts for 5% of the market, purebred wool. It's merino wool, and then it's possum down, which is a combination. So here's your merino sheep, and you all wanted to know what the possum looked like. It's not the opossum, it's this ugly thing. And our guides called it the pest. So anyway, we're headed to Dunedin, which is the Scottish part. This is that's one of my pictures, actually. I thought it was pretty good. On the scenery, more scenery. It's just gorgeous. And a lavender field. Oh my goodness. Now that we heard this story about Shrek, and some of you have probably seen that on PBS, where the poor sheep didn't get shorn for 6 years, and so he had 56 pounds of wool on him, and the poor little guy, now he has a book for $25. Anybody want it? Amaru. This is a Victorian town, and what we saw is a little Victorian village and lots of secondhand shops. And I wanted to see what a dairy looked like, so Carol indulged me and went to this dairy. Because Karen was always talking about going to the dairy, and I wanted to see what was in a dairy. Well, we didn't have lunch there, but we ended up having lunch at this place called The Roost. So we passed the largest artificial lake. And then we saw the world's steepest street. And some people got out and climbed it. And this was our hotel in Dunedin, with its very inaccessible breakfast area. I had to go in through the fire escape with the walker. So we passed a fishing village, Moeraki, and Otago Coast. And the number one fish here is blue cod. Remember, in the north it was snapper. This is taken on the way to the castle. I would say the castle was my favorite part of the tour. Look at all those steps going up. I went up all those steps, and somebody took up my rollator, and I went all the way up into the building. It reminded me a little of Chinquapin, reminded me of Biltmore. It just reminded me of Monticello. It had dumbwaiter. Reminded me of Reynolda House because it had a lot of intrigue. I don't have time to go into that because we're running out of time. But there's the inside, just gorgeous. And all those steps, but they had great railings, so I was good. This is the outside of it, but here's the interesting part. Cheshire Cat. It was all around Alice in Wonderland. I wonder if I shall fall right through the earth. How funny it should be to come out among people that walk with their heads downwards. Please, ma'am, is this New Zealand? This part gets snow in the winter. Then we went to this Royal Albatross Center. And we had this little sign that couples were lining up in, it's called Mates for Life. But these 3 guys lined up there because they were on our tour. We had 9 couples, remember. These are 3 of the men in three couples, all named Bruce. I'm gonna skip this because it's just about the sock factory. But here's the Gore Road, the presidential highway from the town of Gore to the town of Clinton. And this is another little town called Lawrence. And the Kutha, which is the largest river by volume. Lots of fish, eels, flounder. Roxburgh, another sweet little town that made delicious shortbread. Then we went to this fruit stand, which Carol and I were glad to find this fruit stand because we were invited out to dinner that night and we needed a little token of our appreciation. So we got some cherries here. It was really nice. Now these are the mountains on the way to Queenstown that I took. And there's what we went on when we got to Queenstown, the gondola. There's the looking down. But you felt very safe on it. And there I am right at the top, and there they had wonderful accessibility. You could tell it was brand new because it was all plywood. They're very focused on adventure sports there. And golf is not an elite sport there, it's a regular sport because, you know, here you have to pay a lot to play golf, but it's not that way there. And the interesting thing about them is that Tiger Woods' caddy is a Kiwi. There's our hotel there. Now, my friend Carol, she needed pillows that were not feathered pillows. And they were very, very accommodating. And this place especially, that had a pillow menu. So I put this picture in. This is from Mutt's cartoon. Earl, these pillows could be softer. Can you call the front desk? And we were always offered different pillows, but never a pillow menu except that one place. And remembers Betty Holges. It was here. This is Betty Holges' niece. And we were invited to her home and had dinner there. That's her and her husband. They're both musicians. So on the way to Milford Sound, which is, Milford Sound is one of these places that people think they gotta go. And I did too, but it wasn't my most favorite place, but it was nice. I mean, where can you see four waterfalls? It's called the Four Sisters at one time. This is from the boat. I found this later, it's called Gertrude's Valley. It's very near, we didn't see it, but they already have snow there. This is a little tunnel we went through to get there. It's one of those deals where one lane of traffic goes through and then they change the signal and the other lane goes through. And I can tell you all about how that was built and everything, you know, over years and years of time. It was my impression that there were more mountains on the South Island than the North, and more undeveloped land, and most people seem to agree with my assessment of that. And many more sheep than there are people. Now this was more my speed. This is the TSS Earnslaw. You know, just a nice, quiet, little boat ride back in Queenstown, a calm lake. And that was where you could see the engine room of it. They even had a piano on and song list. And this is where we were headed, which was a Walter Peak farm. It's the gal that did this shearing of the sheep and the border collie demonstration. And I found this cartoon. Herding dog is so blah, I prefer motivational barker. And there was our place that we ate. So you're into the beautiful part. So this is the Bountiful part. It's my favorite part, really, folks. My friends, this is the essence of life. This proverb is an exclamation which can be used when someone is surprised or satisfied, generally used at a dinner table from a guest who is appreciative of the meal he has received. So I'm going to cover the meal. Air New Zealand. That's about what the meal looked like. Very nice. In fact, I think ours looked nicer than that, but you find what you can on Google. That was breakfast. Now there's the kiwi. I told you about the kiwi, that you always say kiwi fruit. And it was begun as a Chinese gooseberry. This was my favorite meal of the trip. Was there's a seafood chowder, a pan-fried fish with sauce, and then the dessert was, hey Martha, sticky toffee pudding. Except they had a different name for it. And then this is pavlova, which they or Australia created. They're still arguing about who created it, but it's meringue with fruit on it. And it was served pretty often. Now, one of my friends, Susan, noticed that this looked a whole lot like Whitman's. I think it does too. I kind of wondered if somebody copied somebody else, but this is Whitaker's. And they kind of took the place of Cadbury's because Cadbury came into New Zealand and they said, oh, well, we won't tear down the factory. And they did. And so, anyway, this was what the bag looked like. But what I want you to see was the icons on the little bag are so adorable. You know, they have little kiwi and all the various fruits. Their attention to detail is wonderful. Now this is back when we're having the hangi, which is the food cooked in the ground. And that's what it looks like on the table. It was delicious. Oh my goodness. And that's what somebody's plate looks like. Now, this is kumara, which is the sweet potato. And you find sweet potato in various colors, but you find it a lot. These are carrots. The reason I put these in, they're the best carrots I ever had in the world. They were just delicious. And I looked up to see why they were so good. It's because the climate's just right. Cool at night and warm in the day. Avocados, they're very inexpensive. They grow a lot of them. And these are the brightest green olives I've ever seen that were on the appetizer tray. This is the meal I had at Dockside, which is basically your fish and chips. These are beetroot cracker minis. Never had beetroot cracker minis, but this was on the airplane. And you always hear, well, we're gonna have proper chips. Well, this company really is named Proper Chips. Doesn't that look like our bacon? Well, it was, except they call it streaky bacon. Every time you see this bacon on the menu, streaky bacon. And when you see skim milk, it's trim milk. And these are rolled cheese, or rolled or folded cheese sandwiches. They were delicious. Now this is the inaccessible breakfast bar, but all the breakfast bars look pretty much alike. And even a lot of places would have fried rice, because you know, you're very close to Japan and other places. One place had even smoothies. Fresh apricots, oh, they were just marvelous. We had the fresh apricots at Betty Hodges' niece's house. Our dinner that night was the rosé wine and the fresh apricots, roasted chicken with gravy and cranberry sauce. And she said they use the cranberry sauce because it's very difficult to get turkey. Mashed potatoes and mixed vegetables, and for dessert was lemon and ginger tea, apple pie, and homemade apricot and basil ice cream. Aren't we lucky that we got to go to someone's house? This is the Walter Peak Farm. It's just a glorious buffet. This was so cute because those were the little tiny desserts, so you didn't feel guilty. The ice cream's real big. Hokey Pokey ice cream is the big thing they're known for. And so I have made you some Hokey Pokey cookies, and there are also some Tim Tams, which are a sandwich cookie dipped in chocolate. So I think with the group that we have here, you can have one or the other. I think we got probably more than 100 people here. And I'm pretty sure I have about 60 of each thing. So I would ask that you take one or the other, either the cookies or the Tim Tam. That's how they serve the fish and chips, even in a restaurant. And these were some bars I really like. They're made in New Zealand. You know, they're like a granola bar, but just so delicious. Oops. Here we go. This is the national anthem. There we go. about y'all. I love that anthem. The anthem so beautiful. It brings me to tears almost as much as being with my pen pal, who this morning emailed me and said she wished me a good talk. Be sure and get you a goodie before you go out. Carol will help you get one. Thank you.